Hello fans of these fancy face toasters, I'm here to show you more free games that you can get right now on the Meta Quest 3, the Quest 3S, and the Quest 2. I hope that in this video I can show you some hidden gems that you haven't heard of, or let you know of some paid games that became free. And as always, make sure that if you're going to do one thing, you leave a review for the devs on their store page to help them out, because giving honest feedback helps more than you know. Now they say not to open up the gates with your favorite VR game, but in this case, I can't help myself. Veil VR has to be one of my favorite VR games of all time. And now, all you lucky VR players can play this game 100% free. And in this video, I'll be going over all the aspects of the premium version of the game and the free-to-play version. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of it, Veil VR is a virtual reality first-person shooter with a beautiful artistic style and a combat that feels similar to CSGO, but on a loadout system rather than an economy system. You have your own dedicated hangout area that you can be in before you load into any of the matches to mess around with guns and buy cosmetics with currency that you earn by playing the matches. Inside the premium version of the game, you can have a search and destroy game mode, a capture the flag mode, free-for-all, team deathmatch, king of the hill, gun game, and a mode called Scout Knives, where the gravity is turned down and everybody only spawns in with a bolt action, throwing knives, and impact nades. Inside the free version, you do get access to a pretty cool place called the Citadel. It is a massive hangout area with a parkour/combat area, mini golf, a shooting range, and you can even challenge people to 1v1s to get a feel of the combat on a smaller scale. Every time you go into a 1v1, it'll spawn you into a procedurally generated arena with a random sight and a random gun, and you try your best to win. And they even have a mode where you can go into the mines. I swear to God, if I hear one of you yelling chicken jock! You can go into the mines, collect resources, and fend off duck monsters and attempt to make it out alive. And the coolest part is that if you collect enough resources in the mining mode, you can actually unlock the premium version of this game for absolutely free. It's a fantastic game. Feels great, looks phenomenal, and the devs are some of the kindest people I've ever had the pleasure of talking to. However, if you have a skill issue with shooting people in Veil, then maybe you'd like to be a bit closer to your enemy in this next VR title. Devil's Roulette is a VR game similar to Buckshot Roulette, if you've ever heard of that one, but you can have up to 4 players. You and 3 of your friends sit around a table and decide which one you like the least. You can use the gun on yourself, other players, or any of the several power-ups that make the game a little bit more interesting. The power-ups are given every round, and you need to decide how to avoid the shots and tank the blanks. But yeah, just sit around on a table and try to survive. Games like this, though, definitely make for some very funny moments. I've got some footage of me playing a game similar to this called Bullet Roulette back on my main channel, VR Central. However, be warned that if you did not see this video soon enough because you didn't keep those notifications on, the game may not be free for you right now. It does claim on their store page right now, as of this recording, that it is free for a limited time. I don't know how long it's going to be free, but download it and try it out while you can. However, if you want your table games to consist of more powers and less bullets, then maybe you like taking a seat at the table for this next VR game. This game can only be summarized as Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Hearthstone, but in VR. It is a 1v1 style game where you place monsters and spells to attack and defend. You each start out with 30 health, and your goal is to get your enemy's health to 0. It's got cosmetics, different classes, various ways to stack the cards to build your ideal deck, and more cards than I could ever keep track of. Also, one of the coolest parts about this game is not only that all the effects come to life, but that it's in VR. Imagine sitting down at a table playing Yu-Gi-Oh! With some of your friends, and after you place a card down, the creature comes to life out of the card to obey your every command. It is so wild to have a free game like this with so much depth in VR. However, if you're tired of sitting and want to move around, then maybe you'll enjoy the arm locomotion in this next free VR game. Schmackle is an interesting game because it's not just another game with a gorilla tag motion, but it's made by one of the most popular VR YouTubers out there, J-Man Curly. After his immense success in creating gorilla tag and other types of VR content for years, he decided it was time to make his own VR title. It has unique art style, game modes to try out, secrets to find, cosmetics to get, and most of all is created by somebody who clearly cares a lot about the VR community. Overall, at its core, it is an ARM-based locomotion game that's designed for socialization. So if you ever want to try out a VR game created by a VR gamer, then look no further. However, I've seen how some of you take care of your headsets, and I know you would not be responsible enough to take care of a pet. But let's get you one anyway. Hello Dot is a mixed reality game where you can obtain a free pet that you can interact with in your own space. He can float around your room, he can walk on your floor, you can change his color, or even feed him. These are some pretty basic features in the game, and I won't spoil too much of it for you in case you want to try it out for yourself, but it just had a full release update very recently with a lot of new content that you can try out. So if you've tried this game before, maybe it'd be worth giving it a re-download to see all the new content. And interestingly enough, this game is created by Niantic, the same developers that assist Nintendo with Pokemon Go. Maybe this could even be a free game testing ground for a possible release of Pokemon in mixed reality for the near future. Essentially, this game has Gorilla Tag type graphics and motion, but turns it into a multiplayer horror experience where you yearn for the mines.
They love crushing.
I see what you're typing there, you better stop! When the game starts, you're either a survivor or a monster. As a survivor, you have to mine as many ores as you can and get out. As the monster, you have to kill all the players. Simple enough. The more ores you mine, the more you can spend on cosmetics inside the game. The players can use things like mine carts, elevator doors, and tunnel systems to escape the monster. And the monster, well, he really doesn't need an advantage. All he has to do is touch you with the new COVID-20 virus, and you're going to go down on the floor faster than if you had stepped on a Lego. But if you thought arm movements were interesting, then maybe you'd like trying out this wacky VR game next. And this VR game, bullshit. Why was that bleeped? Hey, AJ, you don't have to bleep that part. It sounds like I'm saying bullshit. Ah, forget it. This is a multiplayer sandbox and discovery game. Ride around a town on the back of a bull that you have to pull and turn its horns in different directions to steer. You can feed the bull, run over people in the streets, participate in an obstacle course, a simple race, or simply explore the map. The graphics in this are very simple, and it is kind of a weird VR experience overall, but hey, for the price of $0, I'll see how it feels to steer a bull. But if you want something where your creativity will really flourish, then maybe you'll like becoming a god in this next free VR game. This is one of the most creative and freeing sandbox games that I have ever seen. Even right at the very beginning, there are so many different ways to play. There are obstacle courses, modes to fight each other with absurdly large weapons, vehicles to fly, and so much more. Even outside of the normal modes, the reason why it's so creative is because you, as the player, can create your own modes, basically creating an infinite amount of ways to have fun in here. But overall, it is a sandbox and social experience of being able to create your own fun. Now let's move on to a VR game that managed to avoid me for over a year. Bowbots is exactly how the title describes. You are a robot and you shoot a bow. But wait, there's more! It's basically an FPS game that turns you into Hawkeye. You shoot a normal bow to start, your selection of cosmetics of course, and you shoot other players as well as targets around the map that give you different arrows that you can use to put a hurt on your competition. On the surface, it does seem like an indie dev that put quite a bit of personal passion into the go of all of it, but maybe the store page just didn't give it a chance because this game is free and it's not bad at all. It came out in 2024, and about a few days ago was the first I'd ever seen it. However, if you're into sports rather than archery, then maybe you'll enjoy tossing some balls around in this next VR game. Wait, can we re-record that part? Gym Class is a pretty popular multi-sport VR game. You can shoot hoops, play baseball, and toss a football around. Also, for clarification of anybody from the EU that is watching, this is a football. This is not a football. But if you have any problems with that, I know where my foot is going next. This is a full physics-based VR sport game that started out with basketball and moved on to other sports. You can join the tons of players online or even make your own private matches for you and your friends. Or if you prefer to be a single Pringle, you can play the story mode where you actually go up against AI of varying difficulties to progress in the story mode. Honestly, it's a very satisfying VR game to be able to shoot hoops in for me. Every time I missed a shot, it made me want to try that much harder to be better at it. But if you'd rather swing your arms around like a crazy person instead of for three-pointers, then maybe you'll like flying high in this next VR game. This is a simple game about you being a bird and flying around in open lobbies. It is similar to a Gorilla Tag style game, but instead of you bouncing around on the floor, you're flying high through the sky. It also has an infection style mode like Gorilla Tag, but in all honesty, I had fun just getting to flap my arms around and soar through the sky. It just feels so freeing as a VR experience to be able to be up in the air and flap my arms to fly around. This is a hand-based locomotion style game that's reminiscent of the core Gorilla Tag, where instead of gorillas, you are cacti, and instead of infected gorillas, you're running from aliens. You can use guns to defend yourself, and even set up decoy cacti. The game has a fun art style, pretty sizable map, cosmetic options, and there even is a native live camera inside of there for those of you who are content creators. You can make some footage in there that looks even better than normal capture on standalone Quest games. This game ended up being pretty fun, which makes pretty sense considering most people in my life called me a prick. It's a passion project created by two brothers, and if you wanted to enjoy a new hand-based locomotion game, then I hope you have some fun in Cactus Jam. But let's move from a cartoon style to an anime style for those of you who are fans of Naruto. Ninja Clash is a PvP style game where up to 4 players fight in the street with jujitsu style moves. There's wall running, teleportation, fire moves, earth moves, and even lightning blades. Everybody fights and the last player standing at the end of the round wins, and if you get up to 3 wins, you are the victor of the match. Oh, and there's also a barrier that closes in on you that you should watch out for. The way that you perform moves are fairly interesting and actually remind me a bit of how Rumble works if anybody's ever heard of that game. Depending on what buttons you push in your controllers and the spacing between your hands, you can actually do different hand gestures in sequence to perform moves. The lower level moves only require 1 gesture, while the higher tier moves may require you to do 2 or 3 in succession. And all moves can be equally effective if you know how to use them. I managed to get some pretty good stealth kills and even win a few matches despite only learning 1 move with a limited amount of time that I played. But yeah, if you ever wanted to try a Naruto style game in VR, then look no further. Because if people are going to call you a weeb, you might as well enter into a VR realm where your hand gestures actually do something. However, if you're tired of wall running and you need to sit down, then maybe take a seat for this tabletop VR game. Dark Sword is a VR tabletop game with a simple goal: spawning your soldiers at the right time and place to kill the enemy team's titans and win the match. As the match goes on, you'll have an energy bar that fills up that you can use to launch artillery-based attacks or spawning troops. Being strategic on what you spawn in and where will help you win the match. And the options you have to pick from are randomized, so don't expect to just spawn in a bunch of heavy hitters all the time. And the pool of who you choose from also increases over time as you play the game, level up, and unlock new characters. As you continue to push the enemy forces back, you'll be able to spawn your units closer and closer to the enemy's side of the map. And if you manage to take down their immobile units or do more damage to their immobile units by the time that the timer stops, you win. It's a simple tabletop strategy game with a fun art style that I enjoyed. By the way, as a reminder, in case you want to see more content, I do other game showcases on here so you can see even more. Also, I do create regular gameplay content at the channel right above my head on here, VR Central, where you can see full YouTube videos, YouTube shorts, and I create content on Twitch as well. So if you enjoy VR gameplay content and not just me rambling off all the time, hope to see you in the YouTube comments and the Twitch live streams. But now let's move into your own living room with some fun mixed reality. Brought to you by Humpty Dumpty. This is a mixed reality game with a VR option for those of you on Quest 2. And I gotta say, I had way more fun in here than I thought I would. It's not groundbreaking by any means, because if it was, the eggs would shatter. But you'll be placed into random lobbies where you face off against other players in either PvP or parkour races. With the PvP, you get weapons and try to knock the other players off the side of the map. With the parkour, it's a very simple point A to point B race, but there's obstacles, enemies, vehicles, and you can even pick up weapons to use on the other NPCs or players. I love the art style in here, and especially the aspect of having the parts of the map form in front of me in my own play space. It was pretty cool. And as a side note, I feel like the cosmetics can be pay to win purely because I'm looking at this cluster of default eggs and I have no idea who I am! However, if you're a bigger fan of FNAF than Humpty Dumpty, then maybe you'll like this next VR game. This game is called Horror. Literally, that's it. Just horror. Need I say more? You're in a dark area that used to make people laugh and entertain them, but now you're making a sound that's even louder than laughing. Screaming like a little wuss. Overall, it was a VR horror game that was inspired by FNAF so much that even the creature that mimics Bonnie has the same confusing movement pattern. Shut doors, keep your eyes glued to those monitors, and make sure you don't run out of power. It also does have multiplayer, but it recently went behind a paywall. However, for you horror fans that also love Poppy's Playtime, I think you'll like this next VR title as well. Just like the previous title, this is also a fan-made game, but by somebody who really loves Poppy's Playtime. For the record, there is a Poppy's Playtime VR experience on PC VR, but this one is an entirely new fan-made creation available on standalone Quest. You'll navigate through an abandoned toy factory, gather clues, solve puzzles, and use your hand tools as well as gorilla tag-based motion. It's certainly not up there with the quality of Poppy Playtime by any means, but for a free experience, it's fun, and you can see that the developer put a lot of love and passion into this fan project. And in case the algorithm gods are watching, this is legally distinct Poppy's Playtime. And while this next title may not be a horror game, it can be if you have arachnophobia. Spiders is a VR social game with gorilla tag-based movement. There are 2 maps to swing around in, and you can even climb up surfaces as a spider. There are spider-killing rats, as well as game modes that will randomly pop up in lobbies to compete in. I also learned that whatever I was eating must have been eating something spicy because I did not know that my webs could explode. And yes, they do have free and paid cosmetics inside the game as well. It's a very simple game without a lot of depth, but for a free game, I did get to shoot and swing around with a web shooter like I was Spider-Man. But now it's time to gather up all your friends for a party. A punch party. Punch Party, much like the previous title, does not have a lot of depth, but it is fun to whack people off. Oh, the side of the map. Sorry, it was on the next page of the script. After equipping your cosmetics, you can go into your specific individual training ground and punch whatever objects that you place in there to gain in-game currency. Then you can move into the brawling arena to challenge other players. It works a lot like a Smash Bros. Style, where each player has a percentage above their head, and it increases whenever they get hit. The more they get hit, the further they fly whenever you hit them again. Like I said, not a lot of depth, but it is very fun to send your friend to the stratosphere. Lastly, let's chill out for those of you who are fans of Candy Crush. I never thought I would be saying this, but this is just a mixed reality Candy Crush. I can't imagine most VR fans enjoying this versus more action-intense games, but it was satisfying to match the colors. Games like this and the egg game that we showed earlier in the video, I think are good transition games. Something you can download and show to a friend to show them how cool VR and mixed reality can be that's not too intensive if they've never worn a headset. And after completing each level, you can use in-game currency to decorate a town as well. Welcome to the best Smash Bros. Experience that I've ever got to punch my friends in the face with in this fancy face toaster. Brazen Blaze is a 3v3 style game with 11 characters that all have their own unique playstyle and 20 corresponding weapons. You've got everything from a standard punching brawler to those with a big shield to specialize in defense, or my personal favorite, which is literally just a robot that throws explosives with little happy faces on it. It's one of those games where you can have a lot of fun talking smack to your friends and have fun getting to pummel each other too. Just imagine how intense Smash Bros. Nights would be with your friends if you had to use your actual hands to punch each other. Wait, isn't that just Fight Club?
The first rule of Fight Club is, you do not talk about Fight Club.
And if you need to know anything about this company's history to know their quality, they've made several games that I've showcased here on the channel before, like Devil's Roulette and Chained Escape. However, if you'd rather team up with your friends to fight monsters rather than each other, then maybe you'll like this next free VR game. This is a great game for those of you who enjoy dungeon crawlers like Ancient Dungeon. And if you haven't played Ancient Dungeon, it's a procedurally generated dungeon with various weapons and items to collect. It does look blocky and low poly, but every single time that you load into here, it's a different instance. Whenever you hit that play button, you'll have the same art style and theme of the area that you select, but the entire layout, where the enemies are, where the loot is, all of it will be different every single time. There are basic things like axes and swords, food to heal you, treasure to find, grenades, and even a little added fear for those of you with arachnophobia. You can also have an NPC tank companion if you happen to be playing alone before your friends decide to get on the game to try it out with you. I mean, I don't know about any of you, but I personally feel like any game that allows you to be a giant buff doge at least deserves a download. But if you want to be lighter on your feet, then maybe you'll like this next VR title. Exergale is a fun, free game of getting to fly around and collect objectives. There are mechanics to make the flying more interesting that you can swing in certain directions, different color objectives that are worth more, etc. The single player mode has you going around large islands, flapping your arms to fly, holding them out to glide and steer, and to collect objective points before the timer runs out. The multiplayer features you getting to race with your friends to see who's the best flapper. Wait, that sounds like an insult. It not only feels like a workout to flap my arms that much, but the art style of the game and the different areas that I got to experience were great as well. Visually, it looked great, and the main objective of the game was programmed exactly how it needed to be. And I wish I had a clever transition for this next one, but we're literally going from flapping your arms in a wingsuit to Breaking Bad. Well, you can finally be Walter White with a fancy face toaster. This is a VR hand tracking experience that I actually enjoyed a lot more than I thought I would. I'm somebody who likes to learn, and I'm also a very visual learner. And if you're like that too, and you're trying to learn chemistry, I think that you will love being able to physically see these reactions with each other at an atomic level. Even if your goal isn't to learn more about chemistry and atomic bonds, I think it's cool to just manipulate these different elements and see how they react. You can create classic compounds like sodium chloride, H2O, meth. In all honesty, I don't know if it's actually possible to make the correct chemical compounds for drugs here, but if you happen to find out how, then maybe you can fly higher into space for this next free VR game. This game may not be the most in-depth, and for some parts feels pretty slow, but from what it lacks in features and speed, it more than makes up for in visuals and story. You died on Earth and were reincarnated into a star, a being of pure light. However, the shadows are kidnapping your fellow stars and you need to rescue them. You'll fight off the shadows with different moves, and whenever you rescue one of your kind, they teach you a different move to use against the shadows. It's not very complex, and to be honest, it can feel really slow at times, but the visuals are stunning. It has hand tracking for those of you who suffer from stick drift, and the whole story is basically wrapped around you battling your own inner insecurities and learning to conquer them by braving forward. It is a fantastic experience overall, and I enjoyed getting to play it. However, if you want something that is below rather than above, then maybe you'll like blasting baddies in this next VR game. Monster Rampage is a bit of a roguelite wave shooter experience. There are waves of monsters that progressively add more types onto the oncoming hordes. You start out with mostly zombies, there's flying demons, then you progress to dogs, werewolves, and more. The more that you kill, you'll occasionally have power-ups that drop to do things like give you a different weapon, more speed, or other upgrades. And at that point, it's just a matter of blasting and surviving until you're eventually taken down. So overall, it kind of feels like a roguelite budget Doom. You do seem to have one get-out-of-jail-free card in a sense, where after you die, you can revive and continue on the same run. But after you get your final game over, you just jump back in and do it again. You can get coins to progress in the menu to have different classes of starter guns that will drop for you. For example, instead of having a pistol, it is replaced with a heavy revolver. However, if you want your biggest monster to be Mother Nature, then maybe you'll like trying out this next free VR game. Primordial VR is a full open-world survival game that kind of reminds me of an unblocky Minecraft. You start out with a character, which the random name generator gave me the lovely name of Josimabloxa, and you can randomly generate your world and share the world seed with your friend if you happen to get a good generation. And the random name generator also gave my world the name of Tutty. When you venture out into the land, you have a backpack for all of your gear, you collect resources, and try not to get your butt kicked by an angry hog, which I apparently couldn't beat to death with a log! You can hunt, craft tools, create animal fur clothes, and equipment to start living your life among nature. It starts to get real weird though when you encounter portals that require deer heads to activate, and apparently anthropomorphic boars that can wield clubs. Like, what even is this? But if you want something that's a mix of old and new, this free VR game just had one of the biggest overhaul updates I have ever seen. What started out as a small indie passion project has turned into something so much more. The game is updated from what used to be a simple tagging-based game with a few fun items and cosmetics, to a massive, cohesive open world with its own day-night cycle and full map customization for people that like to design their own maps. There's even different NPC communities inside each of these world's biomes that you can interact with and trade with. And with that, there is a dual currency system where you can get button coins for gadgets, but you can now get silver beans from trading with NPCs. And with this massive open world, there are a lot of hidden chests around where you can get the premium currency, as well as easy daily tasks that you can complete to where you don't feel too pressured to buy the premium currency. The developers also added in a thank you to their community in the update, where if you play before the update, you get some of the old locks for free every single week. The devs took a lot of time, love, and care into this update. They listened to the community feedback and turned Yeeps into something that is miles ahead of what it once was. But if you need a break from this huge open world, then maybe you'll like this single-player VR game. This is a free stealth action game created by developers that used to be on teams creating projects for Halo and Metal Gear Solid. You receive a distress signal from a girl named Hope, and you hack into the surveillance system to guide her safely out of the hostile territory that she's found herself in. It's a pretty interesting storyline, and the visuals aren't bad either for a free game, though reading the reviews, there were people who complained that the experience itself was a bit too short and they wanted more. But hey, if they wanted more, I'd guess the game is good, because otherwise they'd say it sucked. Surprisingly enough, this game came out in 2019, and I never even heard about it until recently, thanks to somebody mentioning it to me on Reddit of all places when I made a giant list of all the free VR games I've showcased to help more people. However, if all the action is a bit too much and you need to chill out, then maybe you'll like this next free VR game. As you can probably tell from seeing this footage, it is a Gorilla Tag clone, but I thought it deserved a spot on here because based off of the numbers that I've seen, it is one of the most popular Gorilla Tag clones out there. It's got cosmetics, maps, and game modes like sledding and freeze tag. It also has different animal cosmetics that you can turn into, similar to the layout of Animal Company. Just be careful when you go in there, because I was only in there for 5 minutes and I found myself on the wrong side of the iceberg.
Hey, listen here. Give me all your money. Give me all your money. Right now.
UG is a game where you play as a prehistoric caveman. You can explore the different areas of the land, join different lobbies, meet people, and unlock things inside the game. You can collect resources by using tools on animals, which is a nice way to say I hit a chicken with a rock. You can hatch and feed your own baby dinosaurs to make them grow up to become mounts. And you can unlock saddles to make them rideable, and even unlock extra seats to take your friends with you on a ride. You can unlock tools with a progression tree that's in there. You can go from having something where you can store one item to storing many items on your wrist, or things like going from a rock and a stick to a slingshot. And in case you and your friends do get jealous of each other's stuff, there actually is a full trade system in there. So you can actually trade dinos with each other in case you want each other's stuff. And of course, there's unlockable cosmetics, which, by the way, made me look fabulous! And as of the time of this recording, UG has officially reached 100,000 reviews on the Metastore, despite only coming out in an early access state as of August. So that means not only does it have a player base, the story won't be entering a dead game, but clearly people love this game, or else they wouldn't be giving it this many ratings. Now let's move on to our next game, where you can also unlock some animals, but in a way that might anger Nintendo. Rough Knots is essentially what I would like to call Pokemon or Pal World in VR. You can travel along this small planet that all has different vibrant environments where there are creatures that you can battle and try to capture. Not only that, but you can also try to get involved in the violence yourself. You can unlock axes or other types of tools to be able to help in capturing these creatures. You can challenge different NPC creatures to try to capture them. You can challenge other players and see who's stronger against their Pokemon. I mean, pocket monsters or something. Anytime your Pokemon loses a battle, you can actually throw them into a healing station, but it definitely feels like Pal World watching my small adorable puppy explode into a blood cloud. I just watched my own Pokemon explode into a blood cloud. This isn't like Pokemon. This is not like Pokemon. And there's different things that you can collect around the map, like being able to get different objects to sell them to a robot god dog. And you can also collect resources around the map to level up your creatures. So if they're an herbivore, they'll take some berries. If they're a carnivore, you actually have to go and challenge some of the other creatures and take their meat and feed your animal. So in a lot of ways, it really does feel like a Pokemon-style VR game with hand locomotion. But if Nintendo is listening, this is not Pokemon. Now let's move on to some different crime that's not copyright related. Kinda. Grand Theft Animals is essentially the baby of Gorilla Tag and Grand Theft Auto. I know from these videos this game does look rough around the edges, and that's because it is. It is from a small indie team though, so I will say keep that in mind as you're going in there. Essentially, the point of this game is to go around this town and you can complete missions in order to get resources. Like here in the beginning, I had to just deliver a pizza to the other side of town. I was able to deliver that pizza, got some money, and then I was able to get a gun. And there are actually some missions around the map that are locked behind getting certain equipment and resources. So for example, before I got a gun, I went over to this person, tried to accept their mission, and it claimed that I needed to have a gun, so there is a small bit of progression in there. And you can also get vehicles inside the game, including a questionably copyrighted car that may make you go back in time.
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
You can even do certain things in there like getting resources and working your way up to larger jobs, like even robbing a bank. And you're not free from consequences either. I randomly decided to shoot an NPC and then all of a sudden they gave me a wanted level. Now let's move from the US to our friends across the pond for a little bit of welcome to Britain treatment. Froze is a very simple game that a lot of people have seemed to enjoy recently. It's got cosmetics, color customization, different things to unlock, and the main objective is that you go into this open area and you challenge other players to try and level up. And it's really up to you what you make of the fun in here. You can go over to somebody and try to be friends with them, or you can give them the old welcome to Britain treatment and shove a knife in them. And every time you leave the arena, either willingly through the door or by force, like how I stabbed this other frog, it will give you a performance review where you're able to see everything you did in there, and you'll be able to get XP to unlock different things. Everything in there is kind of medieval weapons based, so there's not really any firearms, but there are swords and bows. And I will say having swords with hand locomotion is definitely interesting, to say the least. Now, since we're entering into spooky season, these next 3 games might give you a bit of a scare. Monsters and Mazes is a Dead by Daylight style horror game, but with a maze. And each maze is not only different with its own theme, but also has different difficulty ratings depending on how complex the maze is, the objectives you may have to complete in order to get through certain areas, and other things like that. Like this one that I was in that looked like an arcade style, looked like it had metal doors to where it could trap me in there with the monster, but things like this corn maze, you could easily see through it, but it did nerf your motion if you just tried to barrel through the maze. Now going in there, I actually thought that the monster was randomly selected, but the game does actually have an interesting mechanic where it rewards you for playing more often. Whenever you go into a new lobby, it puts everybody's name on this picker wheel, and depending on how much you've been playing the game, how much currency you obtain, you can actually put more currency into that wheel to make your section bigger so you have a larger chance of becoming the monster. It does have some fun cosmetics in there, and I did kind of wonder why the default character model made me look like a legless Steve from Minecraft. And if you're worried about the quality and love that goes into this, don't worry, because this game is actually developed by the same developer who made Sail VR, another phenomenal free game that I've showcased on this channel time and time again. And in part 10, we'll be showcasing another game that they've developed that you may not have heard of. Now let's move on to our next game with a bit more radiation. You know, fitting for 2025, am I right? This is yet again another horror game where you try to survive and complete objectives in different environments. And there are a bunch of different areas to choose from that all create different instances, which allows you to go in there with players. You can meet other people in the lobby and say, hey, does everybody want to help me beat the hospital level? And everybody goes into there, or you can just ignore everybody and go in by yourself. There are, of course, cosmetics, and there's also gadgets inside the game that can help you survive the monster. But essentially, it's going into these different environments, trying to complete things like light torches, turn on a generator, something to that degree to help you get from point A to point B and beat the level. One of the differences, of course, between Monsters and Mazes and this is that the creatures that you're trying to survive from are actually bots. So it actually did scare me a little bit more because their movements were very unpredictable, especially when he just turned on a dime and started running towards me. I let out a bit of a fear tinkle, but we don't need to talk about that. And now we have another horror game coming up next, which is a bit more simplistic. Like I said, this is a bit more simplistic than Monsters and Mazes or Mutants, but some people might like having less mechanics in there. You do have cosmetics like mutants, but I didn't really see anything that gave you any kind of gadgets. Once again, the monsters are NPCs, and the point is to try to get around them, get from point A to point B, and there is a large area to explore with trying to get around these monsters. So if you want something that's a bit more straightforward and simple, getting from point A to point B, no cosmetics to help you, optional team up with players, you might like it. Or you could be like me and hide behind a shelf and wait till the monster gets distracted enough by munching on everybody else to go past them. Now let's move out of the horror experiences to something that's a bit more Minecrafty. Animal Blocks is one game with a bunch of different games inside of it. In the main lobby, you can go to a bunch of different worlds that offer sandboxness, PvP, exploration, and even in the main area, there is a Minecraft aestheticness where you can go around, claim a plot, you can start building things on there, and it actually does have a pretty good claiming system to where your plot is designated for you and you alone. I experimented with trying to go over to somebody else's plot and mine through things, and it just didn't work. So you can create and share stuff and feel like you're protected. An example of one of the modes is I went into one of the PvP arena shooters. You're able to go in there, you start it with a pistol, and you can eventually unlock things like Uzis or sniper rifles, and it's all hand-based locomotion. I gotta say, props to some of these people for managing to hit no scopes while also moving around with gorilla tag motion. It has cosmetics to turn you into different animals, it has cosmetic gadgets that allow you to do things like fly with the wings, and there's different outfits like, of course, this legally distinct red tracksuit. Now let's move on to this next VR game that you can play if you've got a little less meat on your bones. Skelly is a VR game with a few different games inside of it. You spawn in on a small island that you can use to chat, hang out with people, purchase cosmetics, and there's also secrets around the island, like how I managed to get under the island here and find this locked door, which I'm assuming they'll probably allude to in a later update. There's different game modes inside of there. One of the worlds, I was able to go in there, see that it's a giant city, and you can actually spawn in cars and race people. There is a freeze tag type game mode, which is very similar to how it is in Penguin Paradise, or if you're unfamiliar with that, it is similar to the infection in Gorilla Tag, but instead of you infecting somebody else and then they're on your team, you tag them and they're frozen, and you as the freezer have to tag every single person before the timer runs out. And they have a murder game mode, which is essentially like Gmod Murder, where everybody spawns in, you're supposed to collect these coins that are around the map. If you collect enough of the coins, you'll get a weapon, but you'll be running away from whoever spawns in as the murderer, which will try to prevent you from getting the weapon and try to kill everybody in the map before he can be killed himself. I'm not sure if this happened to anybody else, but I will warn you ahead of time just because I want to be fully transparent. I did try to play this game, and I did have some performance issues while playing it, so I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware. Star Vault is a MOBA-style game inside virtual reality, which, if you're unfamiliar with the concept, you essentially have a huge roster of different characters that all have different play styles. You earn points inside the match to be able to buy and upgrade abilities, and you escort minions through the enemy's defenses for them to be cannon fodder so you can destroy the enemy's defenses and make your way to their base, destroy their home base, and win the match. I had put off playing this game for a while, but I am really mad at myself that I did. Everything in there, from the diversity of how the characters play, the visuals in the game, even just the vibrant color art style with some of the display UIs in there were just amazing. This is a game that I would happily pay $20 to $30 for, and you can get it for completely free. And while they do have premium currency options inside the game, this is one of those games where you can just play it to unlock things. I felt no pressure during my time playing that to even buy any of the premium currency. I was able to go and unlock characters and unlock anything I needed to just by playing the game and having fun. There's cosmetics to unlock, there's a free and premium battle pass system. You can go in there and play against bots, against other players, and there's even a full sandbox mode for those of you who just want to use the characters and mess around. And with Star Vault being my favorite choice for this showcase, I'll leave a link directly in the description below for you to be able to download this game. And I hope all of you in the comments will give me feedback for these videos. Do these need to be longer to cover the games more? Do they need to be shorter? Should I have timestamps and URLs for all this stuff? I would like to. I just want to make sure that everybody is watching the videos and not just skipping to all the URLs. But now let's take you tens of thousands of feet in the air to fall out of the sky into this next free VR game. Project Freefall is unlike any other versus game I've ever seen in virtual reality. You jump out of a plane and fall through the sky. And as you're flying through the air, you don't have to worry about just when you're going to hit the ground. There's different structures to fly and maneuver through, there's different gadgets you can use against the other players, and the main objective is that there's this one parachute and that you have to hold it the longest out of all the players before all of you hit the ground and go splat. It isn't an extremely early access version, but the developers wanted to at least put the bone structure of the game out there and let all of you give them feedback so they can improve and polish it. And in case you're worried about the quality and longevity of the game, it's created by the same developers who made Among Us VR, which recently rebranded to Among Us 3D, and they created the I Expect You to Die series. Now let's switch up from versus into some co-op for this next free VR game. Unless you have friends like mine, in which case it just turns into a headache. This is what I would like to call a 4-player hand-tracking job simulator. I do love getting to showcase hand-tracking games on here because I know that a lot of people suffer from stick drift and replacing controllers aren't easy. You and up to 3 other players will select a job on a map, everybody goes in and has a designated station. Each station is equipped with different materials and different things you can use, and everybody has to collaborate with each other in order to get through the level. And in case anybody wants to see some VR comedy gameplay, I just uploaded it recently over on the VR Central main channel. You can go over there. I played it with some other creators and we had a lot of fun. It definitely makes for some funny moments with friends because on top of the collaboration, there's also opportunities to mess with each other, but I'm not gonna spoil the surprise for anybody in case you're watching this with your friends because I don't want to ruin the surprise of what you can do to mess with them. But yeah, overall, it's a wacky co-op hand-tracking game that reminds me of Job Simulator. Now let's move on to a different free VR game where you and your friends have to see how long you can survive. Iron Strike is a paid game that recently went free to play. It's a co-op roguelike featuring physics-based swordplay, gesturing spellcasting, and archery. You can go in solo or have up to 3 of your friends join you for a 4-player co-op experience. If you have that many friends. Some of us don't. Thanks for rubbing that one in, developer. Every time you complete an area, it has that classic roguelike mechanic of getting upgrades for your weapons, and you can customize your loadouts and your cosmetics to best fit your style. They have bosses, mini bosses, and the update right before their free-to-play update, they recently added in new enemy types. So if you want the quality of a paid game inside of a free title, then go check it out with your friends. Also, I do want to sneak this reminder in for everybody right here. If you are enjoying any games on this showcase, please, 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 please do one favor for me. Leave a review for the developers on the store whenever you play it. Tell them you're enjoying it. If you have any feedback for them, let them know what you want to see in there. These developers really do genuinely care about their games, and giving feedback helps more than you know. Giving those ratings helps them be seen more on the store, so that way they get more downloads and they can make these games better for all of us. Now let's move on from being a heroic knight to shooting it up in the streets. Gang warfare has you going and fighting against a city that is corrupted by crime. Inside the game, you can choose who to fight for. Being a mercenary who is paid by the police to fight the crime, you can fight as the police themselves, or you can go in as a gangster to try to climb up the ranks and be the #1 gangster. Every time you select an area, it picks from a pool of a bunch of different side objectives where you can go in there to complete those missions and objectives in order to gain experience. You can use the reputation that you get to level up, you can use the money to unlock different guns, and you can even hire extra people to help you in your endeavors. For example, in some of the videos that I uploaded on my main VR Central channel, I went into there and I got enough money to be able to buy a gunsmith that allowed me to unlock and progress my guns. You can collect drugs and narcotics from any of these gangs and actually sell them for extra money. And of course, there are a lot of cosmetics in there. I think my favorite was probably becoming the Golden Gangster. And of course, in case anybody isn't really a fan of missions and objectives, they have a full sandbox mode where you can go and mess around in. They even have the slowdown mechanic in there similarly to Blade and Sorcery and Bone Lab. Overall, it's a free physics-based sandbox game with optional missions and objectives. All, of course, based around crime. And who doesn't love crime? I remember the last time I committed a crime. Wait, no, don't have that in the record. Now on to another game where you're also in a crime-ridden city, but now you're a bartender with a smoking cat. I cannot make this up. This is an anime cyberpunk style game where you go in and you're a bartender in a crime-ridden city. You can serve drinks, learn about character backgrounds, and try not to be too friendly with some of them.
Oh! Ow! Oh, my ears! Oh, why'd you do it with the robot arm?
This is from a small indie team that just wanted to make a fun game. They had the demo out on Steam for a little bit. The demo recently became optimized enough to where they released it on the Quest. So you can go and check out this game and see what it's going to be about before anybody else. Even in the demo state, there actually are different ways you can mess up with the characters. Depending on if you do something right or incorrect, they will become more or less friendly with you that will reveal more or less information on those characters and their backgrounds. And yes, of course, you have a smoking cat.
We really got to take care of that smoker's meow.
And if you want to see where some of these clips are coming from, I posted a full video over on my main channel, VR Central, and I voiced all the characters.
Hello, is this a bar? Yes, this is a bar. Hello? Yeah, whatever's in the tablet. Okay, let me do a little less Sylvester Stallone.
I enjoy the art style, and the limited content in the demo actually made me wonder where the story was going. Now let's move on to this next game that has a different futuristic type style. This game has the perfect style mix of Tron and Synthwave. Not only do you have the Tron disc on your back, which I think they'll be incorporating that into some game modes later. I'm not sure if it's actually used in anything right now, but the main thing about this game is the bikes. When you're on these motorcycles, it's not like turning a steering wheel in VR or anything. It's not like that leaning mechanic or whatever. You actually do have to pull forward and backwards on these handles in order to boost forward, pull back to go slower, turn right and left. The main objective, of course, is getting to be in this open area with the Tron line behind you and zooming past the other characters, cutting them off, and actually having full Tron bike battles in virtual reality. And I have to say, personally, shout out to the developer of this game, because it's the same developer who made the Monsters and Mazes game that I showcased on Part 9, and he's also the developer of Sail VR. This guy, Garrett, is making some amazing games. Now let's move from the motorcycle into a much safer car in this next VR game. Right off the bat, you can tell that V Speedway is a small indie project, but it does have some fun aspects of it. Even just loading into there, the environment is untextured, every car is exactly the same, all you can do is just change the color. But it does have proper collision physics, and I'm not 100% sure about this, but while I was racing against the other players, I think I was actually drafting off of them, so a VR game that has drafting is pretty cool. And while it does have just the one city that you're able to race in, you are able to change up the actual pathway that you race on. Whenever you scroll through the different areas, it'll actually block off and open up certain rows in order to take the same environment, but give you different race patterns. It's a small indie game, not a whole lot going for it at the moment, but it does have the bone structure in there in order to improve the game and make it better. I had fun in there getting to drift around corners, actually getting to crash into some of the other cars with the proper collision physics. So I hope that if people download this game and give it a go and give the developer some feedback, they'll actually improve the game. Now let's move on to a different game where you're using the two wheels that God gave you. Your own legs. I can't stretch. Hey, cut to the next one, AJ, cut to the next. This is VR Legs Parkour Tag. It's got full body IKs, full customization, and a lot of fun parkour tricks you can pull off in these large maps. It features being able to go in slow motion, similarly to Bone Lab, in order to do tricks, and what makes it even funnier is that you're able to do it in a full multiplayer game, so you'll just be suddenly going in slow motion and everybody is normal around you. And you can even do full front flips, which is really trippy in VR, so if you get motion sick, I would be careful of that flip button. And of course, to make it more interesting, there are tools and traps. You can see right here being able to actually shoot something at the players. You can see right here that a player actually laid a trap for the person that was chasing after them. For this map in particular, there's different bounce pads, and there's actually portals in order to teleport you to different areas of the map. But I'm starting to worry that this game has become infested with VR chat players. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Send help. Now let's move on to this next game where you're still running, but this time for your life. No Clip VR is a backroom style game, which of course includes horror and running for your life. It of course features cosmetics, multiplayer, and different levels to choose from. And of course, depending on the level, there'll be a different way that you'll need to use to actually get out of there, and the monster will change as well. Interestingly enough, they even added in their own infection game mode, where if you're the monster, you are the infected, and you actually have to go and tag everybody else around the map and infect everyone else. I got told recently by a commenter that a lot of it is starting to switch to a paid game. A lot of the levels are locked behind a paywall, but if you are a fan of the backroom style aesthetic and you want to try it in a free multiplayer VR game, then check this out. Now, I hope you didn't scream too much in no clip, because then your throat might be too sore for this next VR game. That was a joke about singing. It wasn't a euphemism. I know I mentioned VR chat earlier. Please don't cancel me. Stage Time feels like a VR chat world, but dedicated into a single app. You go into this underground bar style area, they've got karaoke, cosmetics, and a way to be able to hang out and meet new friends. Like I said, this does feel similarly to just, oh, you can load into VR chat and they've got 500 other worlds like this. But I know that sometimes VR chat can feel overwhelming. There are so many different options in there, so many different avatars, so many different worlds and things that you don't even know. I've talked to a lot of people that don't even want to start getting into VR chat just because they feel like it may overwhelm them with the amount of customization and stuff that's in there. So if you want something that's dialed back a little bit more customized and tailored for smaller audiences, then give this one a go. They've even started to have dedicated events, like right inside here, I saw a poster for a dedicated comedy show. So it's really cool to be able to see that you can actually have events inside games like this and people show up and have fun. And I also got to say, shout out to the fan that I met inside there. They went up to me and they started freaking out about how I was in there and everything. It was really heartwarming to meet somebody like that enjoyed seeing what I do. Well, there you have it. More free VR games that you can play right now. I'm going to have the Echo VR thing playing right here in a little box with a clickable part right up here to where you can actually see that in case you want to be able to download that like I talked about in the intro. And I'll have a playlist right here where you can see all the other free VR games that I've uploaded on the channel right here. Thank you all for watching. Hope you have a phenomenal day, and I hope to see all of you in the next one.